Train the muscles, not the joints.
Welcome back to Natural Lamp Bodybuilding. Mountain. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about intensity. And what I mean by this is that this is spurred from a conversation that I had in the comment section. And somebody asked me, they said, Jason, if construction workers are lifting all day long, why aren't they bigger? Because this is stemming from the video I made on training more than once a day. And the one big missing factor that people don't consider, or at least some beginners don't consider, about construction work is that there's a certain level of intensity when it comes down to that lifting that is done throughout the day. And of course, not to mention, there's only certain body parts that are being used primarily, while other ones are not being used at all. Like, for instance, for the most part during construction work, if you're doing framing and that sort of thing, you're not necessarily using the lats. Now, if you're chopping wood all day long, yes, one could argue that you are using the lats, because if you're coming overhead and chopping in that fashion, you may be using the lats quite a bit. But the intensity is different. Along with when one is using an axe, there's not really an eccentric part of the movement either, whereas there's a slow lowering or a lowering of the weight under tension, right? You know, you can just lift the axe or whatever, but there's no tension on the lat, and then you're bringing the tension only during the positive contraction of the lat, but there's not necessarily a pushback on the lat, which is where a lot of muscle damage takes place. So the few factors that you really have to take into account are these. The first one being intensity. How fast are you hitting muscular failure with whatever given weight you're using? Or is it a weight that you would hit muscular failure within the first 30 seconds to a minute of doing repetitions, right? Because one could argue that you could lift heavy weight and maybe you're not hitting failure, but it's a weight that is intense enough that you would hit failure within a period of 30 seconds to a minute of lifting this weight. And a lot of times for people on the construction site, they're moving back and forth all day, carrying loads that they are not hitting close to failure, because obviously if they would hit failure over and over again, they'd be dead by the first hour of the day and they wouldn't be able to continue their shift, right? So the intensity plays a massive role. It's not just about lifting for the sake of lifting itself. Not to say that light weights and blood flow doesn't help growing muscle or doesn't help hypertrophy and strength, but it is not the only factor. At some point, intensity also plays a role where you need to hit a weight that you will hit anaerobic failure within about a minute to 2 minutes tops, right? In that area. That's the type of weight you have to handle at least a bit of the time, and you also have to handle this with the major muscle groups. I actually did construction work for a period of 8 months where I was doing heavy concrete work, and the part of it that I was getting some results from was with my lower back. A lot of the side muscles of my lower back, like the muscles that would, like the QLs, the quadratus lumborum, and some of the rotatories in the spine, and some of the muscles that basically help with lifting one shoulder or lifting the other shoulder, and also the hip muscles. Those muscles got hit a lot when I was carrying 200 pounds on the side of my shoulders up and down a hill. And one could argue that I was getting muscular results from that because I was lifting a heavy enough load to challenge the body where I was hitting close to failure, or at least I would have been hitting failure if I walked that hill long enough, right? So there are certain types of construction or certain types of jobs that will actually hit some of these major muscle groups, but not all labor jobs will do so. Most labor jobs will hit the forearms a lot, the biceps a lot with, once again, endurance type loads, not intense loads, and the shoulders as well, right? You might be lifting like a piece of wood here, a piece of wood there, and putting it in position, but you're not necessarily using a weight that's a massive challenge. Now that said, if you do look at a lot of construction workers, where they are usually developed is the shoulders though, and the forearms. The shoulders and the forearms and some of the lower back muscles, they seem to get quite a bit of results with, along with the fact that a lot of them, because they're walking all day long and burning that fat for fuel, you know, because fat is like kerosene, it burns at a low rate. But if you're moving constantly all throughout the day, that fat is being primarily used for fuel instead of glycogen. They seem to be leaner. A lot of the construction workers seem to get leaner from this constant activity and just burning the calories throughout the day. But it's not necessarily an anaerobic or hypertrophy driven activity, especially when it comes down to the chest or the lats, or a lot of times the legs, because there's not really a lot of movements that are including a lot of leg work, right? So this is why construction workers don't necessarily get bodybuilding type gains, because it's not necessarily an adaptation for the type of movements or the type of intensity or exercises that they are doing. It doesn't mean that it's not effective. And one thing I will say is that people who are doing construction, depending on what type they're doing, they can really benefit from being in shape and moving so that when they do go to the gym, they can manifest more intensity when it comes down to their body doesn't have to get fired up to start moving. You know what I'm saying? Because they're used to moving the body. It's not like it's foreign for them to move the body. And then they can also do lower volume workouts. And this is what I'd recommend for construction people, is to not do super high amounts of volume, but do effective exercises such as large compound lifts that include the muscles they want to hit that they are not getting hit on the construction site, such as squats, such as lunges, such as bent over rows, such as bench presses, right? I would concentrate on the chest, the back, and the legs mostly, because for the most part on the construction site you are getting a lot of subtle bicep work and quite a bit of shoulder work. And because of this, I feel like you wouldn't have to really concentrate on a lot of bicep work in the gym, although you might feel called to it because, of course, in the gym you can hit the brachii instead of the brachioradialis. And of course, you might want to hit the triceps because you're not necessarily getting much tricep work on the construction site. So again, that's what I would do. But basically, if I was doing construction, I would cater my workouts around a lower amount of volume, but extreme effective volume. So, you know, a couple sets of bench, a couple sets of bent over rows, a couple sets of legs. That would be mainly what I would concentrate on. And then, of course, then go about my day when it comes down to work, right? But if you're concentrating on too much energy expenditure when you're already burning energy all day long, you may notice that you're not necessarily going to be able to sustain that for very long, right? So you're already burning way too much energy in a day. Most of the guys that are in construction talk to me about how they're losing weight, how do they keep weight and all that sort of thing. I would recommend drinking protein shakes throughout the day. The super aminos that I recommend in the description right now, those would actually help you maintain some sort of anabolic activity. And yeah, lots of calories, right? Lots of good quality protein, lots of good quality food. This is the way you're going to basically be able to maintain your muscle mass. But in the end, when you get to the gym, don't concentrate so much on just burning energy. Concentrate on breaking down muscle tissue in the major muscle groups. And I would recommend, you know, anywhere from 8 to 20 reps for the most part, but not necessarily doing those 50 rep sets and stuff like that, because like I said, you're burning so much energy. To burn a lot of energy in the gym as well would be, I think, counterproductive in the long run. So yeah, I hope this answers a couple questions that you might have. And I hope this helps out in your training. Thanks a lot for watching, and thanks a lot for supporting the channel. And thanks a lot to the patron supporters for also supporting the channel. I appreciate it. And mountain.